Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer in that order. Welcome everyone. Regular rollers time. We will dispense with the pleasantries, Commander, and get rolling. We'll start with one sent by Brian, who wrote, Ozzy Smith has been my favorite player since the late 80s. I played a bit of baseball growing up and somehow ended up a shortstop, so it was only natural that he'd become my favorite player and the Cardinals my favorite team. I remember the phenomenon that was the 1993 Topps Finest. I was only able to rip a few packs upon the release and grabbed a few smaller cards, but never anything huge. Thus, the Ozzy Smith 93 Finest Refractor has been a holy grail card for me for decades. My budget generally doesn't allow me to spend crazy money on cards. There are always a few examples of the card on eBay, but the ones graded by PSA are typically in the neighborhood of $1,000. There are raw ones as well, but I don't want to spend several $100s on a raw card on eBay. It seems to me that at a certain price point, it just makes sense to go with graded. Imagine my surprise when I came across one in an old SGC slab with a grade of 8.5. I found the listing with 3 days or so remaining, with a beginning price of $199.99. As the clock wound down this evening, there was just one bid. I saw on Alt that a PSA 8s were selling in the mid 300 range, so I decided to put in a bid of $325, not really expecting to win, but willing to go down swinging. With a couple seconds left, I sent my bid up and ended up winning the bid with a bid of $208.44. Tax and shipping included, all in for about $236, quite a bit lower than I was willing to go for this all-time dream card of mine. I don't care what anyone says. I think the older SGC slabs look fine. We'll definitely enjoy this card at any rate. Next one was sent by Parker, and really cool story here. He wrote, I just finished the 8th grade, and over the year I've bonded with both my science teacher, who used to play minor league baseball in the 90s, as well as my PE teachers, both my PE teachers, over our shared love of old sports cards. Anyway, yesterday I had my science teacher reach out to me. Keep in mind, summer started about 2 weeks ago for us, and he told me about he had a surprise for me. I met up with him, and he gave me the book Playing Baseball the Ripken Way. I thought that was really nice of him to not only think of me at first, but also give me the book completely free. But there's more. I opened the book, and I immediately saw that it was signed by both Cal Ripken and Billy Ripken. I just thought that was a super cool gesture for him to give it to me, and whenever I see something with Ripken in it, I immediately think of you, so I thought I would share this with you. Thought you might find it somewhat interesting. What a cool story. Thank you for sharing, and my props go out to your science teacher for sure. This was sent by James, who wrote, this eBay user has been doing this for the last few months. They list raw cards that they know will clear the $250 threshold as a 7-card lot, with the other 6 cards just being worthless filler cards. By doing this, the card will not get sent through the eBay Authenticity Guarantee program. Now, they have almost 20,000 feedback on eBay, and from what I can see, most of the listings appear legit, so their goal of trying to speed up the shipping may not be nefarious. However, if this type of listing practice becomes common, people with 12 feedback might start doing it, and those people won't have the same track record or reputation. Just wanted to point this out in case something you hadn't seen. Yeah, I have seen this. This is something that I don't know eBay's got to clean up or somehow prevent, because yeah, if you have a really expensive card, if you just list it as a 2-card lot, it's no longer guaranteed under eBay Authenticity Guarantee. They only guarantee singles. So that's a loophole that eBay needs to fix. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if the seller here is doing something intentionally wrong or if they are just trying to speed up the process. But I mean, they're listing this card as mint. This card is clearly not mint. It's way off centered and it's got some discoloration. So, you know, I would think it's in their best interest to avoid the eBay Authenticity Guarantee program. The end price, you know, appears to be pretty fair, like $1,600 for this Ted Williams. That seems about right given the card's condition, and you know, it appears to be an original card. I don't have any reason to suspect that it isn't. So it's not like the buyer here is getting ripped off, but this is just sort of a tactic to be aware of. If you see someone listing a really, really high dollar card with a couple other, you know, random filler cards included in the lot that sort of don't belong, chances are it's because they're trying to dodge the eBay Authenticity Guarantee program. This was sent by Tim, who wrote, while searching for Penguins team issue cards, I came across the sale of this Coke LB's team issue Jim Kite that sold for over $200. These cards usually sell for around $10 or less, with the Mario Lemieux selling around $20. I messaged the seller, and he said it was a legit sale with 2 bidders competing. It was paid for and shipped, but he had no idea why it went so high, except for maybe scarcity. Jim Kite was a defenseman, usually the least collectible hockey players, who just also happened to be the first legally deaf player to play in the NHL. He also has a card in the infamously poor airbrushed 1989 Pwcc set, multiple awful airbrushes. Just thought it was an interesting sale. Very interesting. Yeah, I was not aware that he was the first legally deaf player to play in the NHL. Cool piece of info there, and interesting sale here. Yeah, sometimes just, you know, 2 people really want it, and the sky's the limit. This was sent by Jesse, who wrote, 1997 Fleer Ultra David Arias rookie gold medallion. Seller accepted the best offer of $30. Saw the same card on COMC for around $200. Doesn't seem like a common card, and the player has very few rookies. Yeah, this is an interesting card. David Arias, or Arias, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's actually David Ortiz, or he changed his name to David Ortiz the following year. I think this is the only year he's shown as David Arias on his cards, but this is his rookie, and David Ortiz has very, very few rookies. I think he's only in 2 base sets, the Fleer and the Fleer Ultra. He's got some inserts as well, but only 2 base rookies, and this is actually a parallel of the Ultra. This is a pretty nice card. I think you got a great deal here for $30. CSG 6, not a super grade for a card from the 90s, but again, he has very few rookies. This is one of his nicer ones, given that it's a parallel. So yeah, I think he did really well here at $30. This one's sent in by Peter, who wrote, "This is the kind of lot I look for. It doesn't stand out because of the nondescript title. No photos of the backs of the cards. That discourages competition. And a wide variety of cards, so most collectors are unwilling to pay for what they don't need. Low grade condition, but still good breakup value. There's a 65 mantle home run card, a 68 Aaron All-Star, several cards from the feature Clemente, 2 Goudey commons, 2 play ball commons, bunch of 50s and 60s commons. I didn't recognize the sepia tone mantle card in the center and was skeptical of its authenticity, but I figured that the breakup value without it was still around $150 after seller fee, so I was happy to win the auction for $89 all in." Yeah, this is a kind of lot I used to look for as well. This is what you said is exactly right. First of all, the title's not very good here. Vintage baseball cards, mantle. I need a lot more information than that. Years, some brands, a couple other player names would help for sure. But the second point you made is a really good one. It's sort of a random mix of a whole bunch of years, and that's going to discourage a lot of collectors because a lot of collectors don't collect a wide variety of stuff. Collectors are looking for play ball cards, or they're looking for 50s, or they're looking for Clementes, and a lot of collectors aren't going to want to buy a collection like this because there may only be 2 or 3 cards they're interested in, and the rest are not something they can use. So this is a good, like you said, a lot for a dealer to buy, break up, sell individually, or use it for other lots, and it sounds like you did really well with that. This one was sent by Kevin, who wrote, "Just came across this auction with the description mentioning soft corners, as if that's the biggest problem with the card, LOL. Figure maybe you could use some funnier or lighter stories as well." Yeah, that is funny. I mean, it's not wrong. The card does have soft corners, but not the biggest issue with the card. This is from our previously owned by Edward Scissorhands division, miscut in a variety of ways, majorly rounded edges and staining, all sorts of problems with the card. Soft corners is definitely not the first thing that I would think of when describing the issues with this card here. That is sort of funny. This was sent in by Philip, wrote, "In 2019, when I pulled a Luisa Arraez auto of a Topps Chrome update box, I joked that I was the only one who wanted that card. In the offseason, I bought another Luisa Arraez rookie, a rainbow foil, for $22 with a buyer's premium in a PWCC auction. I figured he just won a batting title and would likely win 1 or 2 more and by the end of his career, so getting the card for the price of grading was a great deal. I put on the fixed price marketplace for $200, figuring I didn't want to sell it, but sure enough, when people started to realize he gets hits, I started getting offers on the card. I was offered $175 for the card and couldn't resist accepting many multiples of the money that I had in on the card." Yeah, congrats on that. Really great buy and sell performance there. And I talk a lot about how I don't prospect and I don't really like that game, but this is where the potential is. If you pick the right guy at the right time, you can really do well. If it's tough, but you can. And here's an example of it. This was sent in by Joe, who wrote, "Thought you might be able to use this one in one of your videos. Obviously, a card swap and a PSA holder. They note case cracked in the title, and they show a severely creased Clemente card in the PSA 9 holder. The case was obviously cracked, replacing the card." Interesting. You might be right that they somehow replaced the card, although the holder looks fine. I'm not sure why they said case cracked. I don't see cracks on the case. I see lots of cracks on the card, but it's also possible that the card was mint when it was put into the PSA holder, and then if you ever own the Kellogg's cards from the 70s, you know that they sometimes just crack on their own, and there's sort of nothing you can really do about it at times. And that might have happened here. Like the card was mint when it was put into the holder, and then over time it just cracked at some point. And that actually would be my guess as to what happened here. Although, again, you might be right. This might be some really shady thing going on. But I think probably it just cracked on its own once it was in the holder, which is unfortunate because it's obviously not a mint card anymore, given that it's got creases on it. But that would be my guess as to what's going on here. This was sent in by Ed, who wrote, "I recently went to a nearby flea market and found a dealer who had a huge assortment of cards, mostly from the junk wax era. After haggling over the price, we finally settled on $45 for about 50,000 cards. Some were in really poor condition, as you can see by the mess, and it was mostly commons with some some nice junk wax common rookies thrown in. I did, however, find a 1998 Penny Hardaway Bams insert card mixed in. To my surprise, I'm a baseball guy and don't know much about basketball. This card is pretty tough insert from the 90s. I ended up selling it for almost $700 on eBay and then sold the commons to another flea market dealer for $70 and got to keep all the rookies for myself. Well, congrats on that. This is sometimes you can get lucky with a flea market find. Looking at this first picture, I would probably advise most people, not to take the gamble here. This is probably just a pile of worthless cards, but obviously once in a while you can hit it big as you did here. Congrats on the Penny Hardaway there. This was sent by Graham, who wrote, "Seems that the sweet spot signatures from the upper deck in the late 2000s have a tendency to fade. Here's an extreme example. I have one in my personal collection that is starting to fade as well. This intrigues me on a number of fronts. What's the value of the card when the signature eventually completely fades? What happens if it's an all-time great or a Hall of Famer? Does someone want a card that used to have an Albert Pujols auto, for example? And can you think of other cards that deteriorate over time, perhaps some of the clear cuts that become foggy? Curious to get your thoughts, a small section of the hobby I personally find intriguing." Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, the sweet spot signatures, that's there's other autograph cards that tend to fade over time, but the sweet spots are definitely more notable, or there's a lot more examples of it, and it's just too bad. I think the card's value just straight up goes down as the auto fades. I don't think there's anything more to it, all the way to the point where you can't even see the auto anymore, and then the card's basically lost all its value. Unfortunately, I don't really think there's any demand for cards that used to have an auto or anything like that. But there's other cards that deteriorate over time. I mean, Roberto Clemente we saw earlier in the video. Those Kellogg's cards just tend to crack on their own for no particular reason here and there. A lot of Topps Chromes cards from the 90s have this greening effect to their surface. It looks kind of strange. Hulked out is a term used to describe it sometimes. Sometimes you'll see cards in PSA 10 holders, like Topps Chrome cards from the 90s, and they like have this ugly green surface, and it's unfortunate. But those are a couple other examples. And we'll finish on a vintage bargain sent by Grant, who wrote, "My father's favorite player was Terry Bradshaw. Because of that, I've always had a few Bradshaw cards in my collection, most notably lower grade copies of his 71 Topps rookie. I'm on the quest to obtain all of Bradshaw's base Topps cards graded 8 or better from PSA from his playing days, which include the years 71 through 83. This led me to do some research on pop counts, and the 1974 set has by far the lowest pop of 8s, 9s, and 10s, just 237 total cards. I'm on the hunt for a 74 Topps graded an 8, which sells for around $135 when you can find them. While searching, a 9 OC was put up as a buy it now for $75. I offered $50 and seller accepted. This puts me at about $59 all in for the card. The last PSA 9 was in November for over $1,000. I'm not a huge fan of the qualifiers, but they can create some value, as I would rather have a 9 OC compared to a 7 in this card since the 9 pop is so low. There are 27 copies of this card with a 9 qualifier, which means the total 9 pop is just 70 cards. I know many people will not touch qualifiers, but as a collector I often do not mind, especially if it's an MK qualifier and it's on the back of the card. With PSA lowering its use of qualifiers, cards like this will not fare as well in the future. I made this sheet in Excel to show the Bradshaw base cards from the 70s, which helped me and give me the comparative info. But that's it for this week's regular rollers. Hope everyone enjoyed, and whether you are high or regular, keep on rolling. Thanks, everyone.